Hi, this is Dalchai. Sorry about the noise in the background if you guys hear any. I'm at the university library right now. Okay, so we're gonna talk about accounts payable, accounts information system. Okay, so let's start off with a little inspiration. I am not a product of my circumstance. I am a product of my decision. Stephen Curry. I like that quote. Okay, so we're talking about the expenditure cycle activities. So what the steps are is ordering of materials, supplies and service. That's sending orders to supplier. Then it's receiving. So that's receiving merchandises or service from suppliers, inbound logistics. And then we're gonna process invoice, review and approving invoice from suppliers, and then cash disbursements. That's processing payments to suppliers. So what we're going to be doing is approving suppliers invoice. That's the third made activity in the expenditure cycle. So that's approving suppliers invoice for payment, and that's circle 3.0. If you look at the diagram down here, if you follow the diagram, it has from the very top, it'll be ordering, receiving, and then what we're going to be doing is approving invoices or suppliers invoices. So let's take a quick look at the steps real quick. So there's the production cycle, right? And they're going to be ordering through various departments and inventory control. That's how they're going to be monitoring their ordering, right? So once they do an order, they're going to go purchase order, and the purchase order is going to come down. We're going to get a copy over here at accounts payable, right? Where our step would be step 3. We're going to get a copy of that. So the inventory and the supplier is going to go into receiving, right? Receiving is going to do what they're going to do, and then they're going to send their receiving reports down to for the invoice to be approved from the supplier. That's their receiving report. They're going to send that down to us at accounts payable, right? So that's kind of a quick look at ordering, receiving, and approving supplies invoice. So next. So the accounts payable department approves suppliers invoice for payments. A legal obligation to pay suppliers arise at the time the goods are received for a particular reason. However, most companies record accounts payable only after receipt and approval of the supplier's invoice. This timing difference is usually not important for daily decision making, but it does require making appropriate adjustment entries for proper to prepare accurate financial statement at the end of the fiscal period, right? So that's part of the process. So when a supply invoice is received, the accounts payable department is responsible for matching it with a corresponding purchase order and the receiving report. We just went through those 2 steps. This combination of the supplies invoice and associate supporting documents created is what is called a voucher package. The figure shows an example of the data entry screen for approving a supplier's invoice. This image is an old image from NetSuite Inc. So don't worry too much about how it looks like. Once the approval has verified that the company received what it had ordered, the invoice is approved for payment. Right. So what we were talking about is the voucher package. So that's the set of documents used to authorize payments to supplier. It consists of the purchasing order, the receiving report, and the supplier's invoice. Okay, so there are 2 ways to process supplies invoice, referred to as a non-voucher or a voucher system. In a non-voucher system, each approval invoice, along with the supplement documentations, is posted to individual suppliers' record in the accounts payable file and then stored in an open invoice file. When a check is written, the paid invoice, the voucher package is removed from the open invoice file. The invoice is marked paid, and then the voucher package is stored in the paid invoice file. That's the non-voucher system. So in the voucher system, an additional document called a disbursement voucher is also created when a supply invoice is approved for payment. The disbursement voucher identifies the supply, lists the outstanding invoice, and authenticates the net amount to be paid after deducting any applicable discounts and allowance. Okay, so we got the voucher system, which is a method of accounts payable in which the disbursement is prepared instead of posting invoice directly to supplier's record and accounts payable subsidiary ledger. And then we got the disbursement of the voucher. So a document that identifies the suppliers, lists the outstanding invoice, and authenticates the net amount to be paid after deducting any applicable discounts and allowances. The voucher system offers 3 advantages over a non-voucher system. First, they reduce the number of checks that needs to be written because several invoices may be included on one disbursement voucher. Second, the disbursement voucher is an internally generated document. It can be pre-numbered to simplified tracking all payables. And then third, the voucher provides an explicit record that a supplied invoice has been approved for payment, and it facilitates separating the time of invoice approved from the time of invoice payment. This makes it easier to schedule both activities to maximize efficiency. The accounts payable process, which matches supplier's invoice to purchase order and receiver report, is a prime candidate for automation. Large global companies can process over 1 million suppliers' invoices each year. Processing efficiency can be improved by requiring suppliers to submit invoice electronically by EDI, that's an electronic data exchange, and having the system automatically match those invoices to the appropriate purchase order and receive reports. Only those supplier invoice that fails this matching process needs to be processed manually. So right here we have a comparison of the traditional 3-way matching system and the new evaluated receive settlement, the 2-way matching approach. So let's look at what we have going here. So another option is to eliminate supplier's invoice. For most recurring purchases, companies know the prices of goods and service at the time they are ordered. So thus, as soon as receipt of goods or services verified, all the information required to pay the suppliers already know. Right? This invoiceless approach is called evaluated receive settlement, ERS. ERS replaced the traditional 3-way matching process, which is suppliers invoice, receiving reports, and purchase order, with the new 2-way match of the purchase order and receiving reports. The ERS saves time and money by reducing the number of documents that needs to be matched and hence the number of potential mismatches. In fact, the ERS system has often configured to automate a 2-way matching process and automatically generates payment. Manual reviews is necessary only when there are discrepancies between the receiving reports and purchasing order. Right, so ERS also saves time and expense of generating and tracking invoice. Okay, so let's look at the traditional three-way match real quick at the diagram. So just like what we learned before, it's one, we send the purchase order to the supplier, right? We get a copy of that over here at accounts payable, right? And then two, receiving goods and filling out the receiving reports, right? So send a copy of receiving reports to accounts payable. And then us, accounts payable, receive supplier's invoice. So that's the three-way matching system right there. So what we do with all of this is that we check quantities on the supplier's invoice, right? The question is, do quantities on supplier's invoice equal on receiving reports and price on supplier's invoice equal price quote on purchase order? Then we have a yes or no. So if it's no, we call suppliers and reconcile to invoice to support documents. If yes, we place supplier's invoice. Now here's the two-way matching system. If we choose to do this, we can actually do both if we want to. For suppliers that don't have a EDI system. So one, we could what will happen in the ERS system is same thing, send purchase order to suppliers, right? Send a copy of purchase order to accounts payable. So we'll have the purchase order. And then receiving gets the goods and fill out the receiving report. They send us the receiving reports to accounts payable. Receiving reports, right? So then we go through and look at the amount owed. We calculate that. Does it equal quantity received from the receiving port, right? Time, price per unit from purchase order. All right, and then we pay suppliers. This one, as you can see, we do calculations here for what we actually get with the prices. So it's not as much as matching their invoices to what we're receiving and the price quote here. What we're doing is we know what the price is. Well, the price is given to us, right? What the price is, and then what we receive, and then we calculate what the amount is owed. Okay. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the threats and controls that we could do on our end and what could happen. So for approving supplier's invoice, we'll look at threat 16, errors in supplier's invoice. Right, to control those errors, verification of invoice accuracy, that's 16.1. 16.2, how we can control that is requiring detail received for procurement cards purchase. 16.3, that's the ERS system that we were just looking at. And then control 16.4, restriction of access to suppliers' master data. And then 16.5, verification of freighter bill and use of approved delivery channels. All right, let's look at threat 17, mistakes in posting to accounts payable. 17.1. All right, how are we going to control that? Data entry, edit control. And then 17.2, reconciliation of data accounts payable records with the general ledger accounts. General ledger control accounts. That's how we control that. Okay, thank you.